Hello, you beautiful freaks. So, my ass has been making some promises, and unfortunately, I think it's time that I deliver. If you recall, during my last video, I did mention that I would eventually, someday down the line, go through all the Hellraiser movies and give my personal analysis, maybe create something of a tier list ranking system for every cenobite that appears on screen. And I think it's time to pay forward on that promise. But it's kind of boring, isn't it? That's kind of ordinary, kind of lackluster. I don't know. It's not. There's something more we could do here, I think, and in the effort of expanding human experience and pushing ourselves ever deeper into the muck of depravity, I have had a little bit of an idea. So in order to fully understand and encapsulate, well, at least to a small degree, the experiences that I'm talking about, I thought I would add a little element of pain and pleasure into the mix. So, what follows will be my off-the-cuff, ad-libbing rating of every cenobite that appears in the Hellraiser films, along with a couple that appear in the comics, while I am being tattooed by my lovely friend Maya here. Hi, Maya. I don't think you're on. Your face is not on screen.
My hand is vaguely in camera. I'm okay. Do you want me to come on camera?
You can come on camera. This is way bigger production than.
I'm doing a tattoo. This is gonna be wild.
It's gonna be fucking awesome.
It's gonna be fucking awesome.
I'm so excited. This is gonna suck.
This is gonna suck for you.
Fuck you.
But I think your cenobite opinions are gonna be exciting.
Thank you so much. I'm very intelligent and sexy, as the point of this video is. I'm not excited for what's about to happen, but I think it's, you know, what I deserve. This is not an original. I mean, it's a Maya original, this is a tattoo in progress. We're gonna be some touching up and finishing work on a tattoo she's already been working on. It's very nice. We can see the finished product at the end, but yeah, it's gonna be very painful, I guess. Oh fuck! Why did I do this?
I don't know. I'm here to support it, but I don't know why you did it.
Thank you so much. So that's my bit. Looks like we're ready to begin. If you would be so kind. Okay. This will be fine. This is awesome. I love this. Jesus wept. Okay. We're going. Okay. As I believe is appropriate, I think it's... I believe we should start with the original film. It's a classic. It's a hit. It's the best one in the fucking franchise. And that means, once again, we begin with Pinhead. It's... What can I say? Listen, he really is one of the best original designs. The nails, which admittedly could have been jeweled pins that also cover his tongue, like in the book, which is a lot hotter to me. He's also a little more femme. I'm into that, but we'll get back to that. I think he's got sort of a certain gravitas that really gives the character an edge. The missing nipples contribute to the overall look in a really magnificent way. I think it's a brilliant artistic design from me. Doug Bradley, as always, is brilliant in the role. So I'm gonna put Pinhead at an A tier. He is fantastic. He is one of the best guys we're getting in this franchise. It should be noted. Listen, okay, I know we're not supposed to call him Pinhead. I know Clive Barker doesn't like it. I know that's not what he's called in the original movie, but in the original movie, he doesn't have a fucking name. He's referred to as the lead cenobite, which is stupid. And to be honest, everything that Clive Barker has come up with since then doesn't really hold a candle. The Hell Priest is just sort of lacking in, I think, the seriousness and gravitas that it could have, and the Cold Man is fucking dumb. So I'm gonna continue calling him Pinhead. I'm sorry, Clive. I think it's a better name. Pinhead Hellpriest, A tier. Very good work. This, of course, leads us to my personal favorite. If you watch the video preceding this, you understand. Deep Throat is absolutely beautiful. I think the cut in the neck is fantastic character design. I think the way it inflects upon her voice, shit, is a really brilliant bit of character design. And I think she's pretty fucking sexy in like a creepy monster demon way, but that's what I'm into, and that's what we're getting from these movies. So Deep Throat, the female cenobite, is going to clock in at an S tier, our very first top of the line premium model cenobite. She's a very good woman. After her, we have the Chatterer, everyone's favorite boy. Everyone loves the Chatterer. He is an excellent design. The bared teeth, the nothing face, the seeming position as sort of brunt dude, tough guy of the Cenobites is pretty fucking baller. I really enjoy the Chatterer's design. As I've said before, I think it's weird to say that he's sexually attractive. But that being said, he's certainly a very well designed and interesting character that deserves a solid spot on our roster. So I'm going to put him in at the solid B ranking. I think there's room for improvement, but I think he's really exemplifies what was good about the original Cenobite designs. And then, of course, we come to my least favorite among the original designs, and to be honest, among most of them, fucking Butterball. He sucks, he's a walking fat joke, and he's like, honestly, even beyond that, kind of a shitty design. I don't think he has any of the creepy, gorish features that the other ones have that make them so iconic. He's got a cut and some sunglasses, but that really doesn't do it for me. So, Butterball's gonna come in at a D ranking. He's not the worst we're gonna see so far, believe me, but, he's not nearly the best either, and I have some personal gripes with how he's portrayed. Now, Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, and the other Hellraiser film with Clive Barker's involvement, brings us the same 4 original Order of the Gash members. And what I believe is a very good choice, but it means we are limited to only one new Cenobite design, and that is the Doctor, Channard, who converts himself in order to gain, you know, power and pleasure and everything that they are into. This is actually an interesting breaking point in the franchise where, A, the introduction of Hell is brought up, and B, the Cenobite conversion process is really gone into in further detail, in which I think, personally, is a bit of a mistake. I think defining the Cenobites as demons from hell is some bullshit when they were originally explicitly outside of a human good-evil morality system and explorers in the realms of pleasure rather than Christian demons. I think that's kind of a boring take. Also, the idea that I always understood of the Cenobites, at least the version we see in the films, is that they are these explorers who have plumbed every depth of experience, who have twisted their bodies in every possible way, and over a period of centuries have cut and twisted and exposed their flesh in these fascinating new shapes. Ow. Really fucking hurts. But Hellbound shows us that, no, this was not a process of slow corruption of the soul and conversion of the body over a period of years. No, they go into a little box and some tentacles cut them up for like fucking 5 minutes, and then they step out fully formed Cenobites. I think it's a really boring take on the interesting design, and I know it's to facilitate the creation of more interesting characters, but I don't think it's worth it for what it gives us. Because, I will say, Dr. Channard is not the most interesting Cenobite design. A, he's a dick who experiments on his patients. They're all dicks, but I think he brings us into a realm of like real human cruelty, where normally we're dealing with sort of a fantastical, imaginistic type of cruelty that we don't really have to confront as a real problem because it's it's demons in hell and shit. It's not like a real problem in real life, unlike unethical doctors experimenting on their patients. The weird tentacle connecting him to the Leviathan himself that drills directly into the back of the brain is a cool feature, but I think everything else about him is a little lackluster. The wires across his face don't really do it for me. So I'm gonna have to rank him in at a C. He's okay. He's middle of the road. He's average, but he doesn't really stand out as amazing as some of the others. And that brings us to Hell on Earth, the first non-Clive Barker Hellraiser film, and the point where the franchise started getting real bad. I'm gonna say it. I will point out that all of the characters we're going to be discussing for Hell on Earth are not technically within the world of Hellraiser cenobites. They're pseudo-cenobites in that they are twisted to the designs of Pinhead and his gash, but they are not mortal to a visited hell. They have not been into a cenobite conversion chamber, so calling them full-fledged members of the cenobite order isn't necessarily accurate. First up, we have Camera Head. This guy is fucking ridiculous, as are, to be honest, all of these guys. The DJ club atmosphere, though, that he brings to the table is a little bit ridiculous. And the combat capabilities he brings to play are a little bit out of the realm of what we normally expect. It's not hooks and chains, it's explosions. That's not the cenobites that I know and love. So, Camerahead's gonna rank in at an E. He's not the bottom of the barrel, but we'll get to that, because next up is CD. This is not a hot take. This is not a controversial opinion. Everyone who has seen this movie practically, essentially holds the same opinion as me, that that CD is basically the shittiest character design we get from the Cenobites. He looks very stupid, he looks very ridiculous, he's got sort of a dopey Patrick Star face, and, most importantly, he shoots CDs at people. F tier. Next up is Barbie. He's fine. He's not as dumb as the gimmicks in some of the others, but he's also not particularly interesting. He basically just looks like Butterball, but with barbed wire across his face, and it's fine, but it's not enough to pique my interest. That's a D from me. And then Piston Head. Now, Piston Head's actually kind of interesting to me. I think he's not as stupid as some of the other designs, but he's still got the pseudo vibe to him that makes him a little bit lacking in personality. Pinhead's got the pins, but he doesn't have a whole piece of machinery jammed into his face. He's got enough originality of character design that doesn't just look like a person combined with an object. And that's not what we get in this particular installment of the franchise. So, Piston Head, while better than the others, isn't awesome. I'm going to rank him in also at a D ranking. And then we come to Dreamer. Now, this one I might get some flack for. This is actually something that people would consider maybe something of a hot take. I think Dreamer has a good fucking design. I know a lot of people hate her. I know the conception of her character, that she is able to dream better now that she's a Cenobite, is fucking ridiculous. But the actual physical design on her is very interesting and very attractive. I think her smoking out of the hole in her throat is not as dumb as people think it is. We all know how I think about Deep Throat, and I think it's a similar concept here, that the hole is a very attractive physical feature. And lastly, Dreamer has something that we have not seen up until this point that is fascinating to me. She has her skin of all her arms peeled back to create this sort of opera glove effect that goes all the way up to her elbows. It is very elegant, it is very beautiful, and I think it places her at a solid B ranking. She's not the best we have, but she is a very good design that does not get enough credit. That will bring us through Hell on Earth and into Hellraiser Bloodlines, which is, okay, it's one of the shittier movies, I will admit, but at this point, they kind of all are. I'm sorry. I know people worked very hard on this. I know how hard it is to write a beautiful script and film something you care about and put it out in the world, but they're not good anymore. And I don't think there's anything wrong with admitting that. Excuse me. But we do have something relatively interesting in Angelique. I actually like Angelique's design quite a bit. I think she's very fascinating conceptually as the first and only character we see who is not a human converted cenobite, but is rather a demon inhabiting a human body who is then converted into a cenobite. I think that has some very interesting things to say about the cenobite world, the cenobite afterlife, rather the Hellraiser afterlife, and that's stuff that is going to be expanded upon further in at least the comics, in a really interesting direction. I think her revealed skull is really fascinating, and the way it tags into her shoulders has got a very, very sexy look to me. I'm very into it. I think she's a hot design. She's gonna rank in at a solid B ranking. Bloodlines also introduces us to the twins, which are not sexy. I mean, be into what you want to be into, but I don't particularly like their design. I think they're kind of dumb looking. It's kind of a cool concept of having a cenobite that is two people fused together, but it's a little bit of their reach exceeding their grasp, in that the actual practical effect work of these two characters twisting together is not up to par with some of the very beautiful and very believable cenobite designs that we've seen so far. The 4 original cenobites in the first movie look terrifyingly real, where the twins look like they're made out of plastic. That's going to be a solid E ranking for me. I'm sorry, but these boys just don't measure up in the way that some of the other characters do. After that, we have Inferno, and we introduce a whole nother set of twins, those being the Wire twins. These two are not connected to each other. They just work in tandem. They have the same essential artistic design, and they are fascinating to me. I have thought about this for hours on end. I've browsed the Reddits and the Tumblrs and the various other Cenobite fan communities, and I don't know if they're hot or not. This is really troubling me. I think their strange elongated faces and their lack of noses are sort of disturbing to look at, but I also think that their role as like Hell's seducers is not an unfounded one. There's something inherently sexual about their design. The scene where they massage a man's chest from under his skin is incredibly attractive to me, and their long, fleshy tongues are like so hot. But I think they are also the start of something sort of troubling with Cenobite design that we're going to get into when we talk about Little Sister a couple movies later. The Wire Twins themselves, though, are going to rank in at an A ranking. They are great designs. However, their accomplice and associate Torso, another riff on the Chatterer with only the upper body, isn't as amazing. I think he's fine as a monster. I think he's cool as a creature. I don't think he's an awesome Cenobite. He's not got the leather. He's not got the outfit. He's a naked torso crawling around. He's very scary, but I don't think he's really what we've come to expect with Cenobite character designs. So I'm going to give him a C. With Hellraiser Hellseeker, we have the character of Bound. Now, Bound is sort of sexy on the face of it. She's got tits out look, and that is attractive, but her actual sort of Cenobite style disfigurements are a little bit boring to me. I think it is unique and innovative to use cloth as the medium of sort of torture, but I think it just doesn't feel the same as everything else. It's not hooks and chains. It's not gaping flesh wounds. It's face and eyes covered with strips of cloth in sort of a lackluster fashion, and I think it was a good try, but I think it ended up falling sort of flat, so I'm going to rank Bound, as well as by extension Bound number 2, the male version, at a solid D. Stitch is a similar concept to me. I think it almost seems like two versions of the same character's design that they ended up deciding to make into separate characters. I think Stitch's face is kind of uninteresting and uninspired, and not really what I've come to expect from the terrifying cenobite designs. There's not the element of fetishy, disturbing attraction there that I have grown so attached to. So I think that is also going to be a D ranking. As is the surgeon. That's another D for me because, quite honestly, I think he's kind of dumb looking. I think he's a gimmick in the way that the original cenobites were not. Pinhead's got the pins, Deep Throat's got the hole under the throat, but none of them are themed after a particular profession or particular sort of piece of operating equipment. I think that's kind of lame and boring. So the surgeon ranks in at a D. That will bring us to the next installment of the franchise, Hellraiser Deader. I know that it has significance within the story of the film, but I still think the name is kind of uninspired and shit. So this particular one only brings us one new cenobite, as I alluded to earlier, in the form of Little Sister. I have a problem with Little Sister. It's the same problem I have with the Wire Twins, but it's actually sort of expanded upon even further in this particular iteration. I don't like looking at her face. It freaks me the fuck out, but it's not just that. There's something wrong with it in the lack of eyes. Excuse me, she has eyes. Lack of a nose and ears, and more importantly, lack of a scar or jewelry or strap or anything else where they should be. It's just blank, smooth flesh without any alteration to be found. I think this is bad cenobite design because I think it detracts from the cenobite origin as transformed humans. I think it's a cool demonic monster design, but it's not good for a cenobite. There should be a scar, there should be a missing nose, not a lack of ever having had one. So unfortunately, Little Sister is going to rank fairly low at an E for me. She just doesn't have the particular scarification that I think fits these characters so well. And then we have the changing of the guard. Hellraiser Revelations was a step in a new direction for the series. It was an attempt to retell somewhat the original story with new characters for a modern audience. And it fucking sucked. It was a bad attempt. And it brought to us a very tragic character design in the Stephen Smith Collins portrayal of Pinhead. That's right, our first Pinhead portrayed by anyone other than Doug Bradley. And this was a travesty. He has none of the stage presence that Doug Bradley brought to the character. He has none of the gravitas. He has none of the importance that he brings to the role. He looks like a man wearing a Halloween suit of Pinhead, trying to do the same shit and get away with it with different people. This design, although it is exactly the same design, sucks. Maybe it's just something about his facial structure, but the grid and the pins really don't work for him. I think they should have been reworked subtly in a way to really highlight his features in the way that the originals highlight Doug Bradley's features. It looks like they took the costume of another character and applied it to a new person without any thought or consideration, which admittedly is what happened. Once again, unfortunately, this character will rank in at an F tier. It's a very sad day for all of us. However, this film also brings us the pseudo-Pinhead, a human who is being transformed into sort of a Pinhead assistant, in a very fascinating design choice. I actually really like this character. He's sort of boring in design, but the idea of nailing strips of flesh into his skull to create this weird, fascinating patchwork is a really interesting take that I almost wish we had instead of the other Pinhead. It seems like a fresh, updated version of the original character that could have had a starring role here, but is just sort of a boring nothing side character. He's fine. I'm gonna rank him in at a C. This movie, though, does actually have a ray of light at the end of the tunnel, because we have an adult female Chatterer, and she's fucking hot. Chatterer was always brilliant character design, and here it's a little, I don't know, it's a little bit is taken away from what made the original design so beautiful. I think the weird facial features that admittedly were very hard to see out of are not so present here. I think the tits on display, they're not obvious, but they are there in a way that sort of highlights the character as being maybe even trying to be sexy in a way that never felt like was going on with Deep Throat or, well, not the Wire Twins, but you understand what I mean. She's a bit of a modern design for a character that could have looked good in the original 80s and 90s style, but I won't hold that against her. I'm gonna give her a solid B ranking. I think this is an excellent redesign of an old character. And then we have a new attempt at a revitalization. It really does feel like at this point the franchise was struggling, looking for some sort of purpose, and finding it in a variety of misplaced directions. We have a new Pinhead, portrayed by Paul T. Taylor, who's fine. Judgment brings us a Pinhead who is a rehashing of the original, but he doesn't bring anything new to the role. He's the same, but without that magnificent, magnetizing performance. He's an attempt to recapture the magic of the original that just falls a little bit short. He's not terrible, he's just fine. He's a C average. He's boring. Now, while we don't see any other Cenobites in this particular movie, we do see other demons in the form of the Stygian Inquisition. And I feel a little weird classifying them all along this ranking system because, again, as I say, they are not Cenobites, but one of them does have a particularly Cenobite-esque design to him, that being the Auditor, who types up the misdeeds of damned souls on his little typewriter. His cut-up face and glasses are very cute. His weird, bookish personality is adorable. He's like this weird, nerdy little introvert that I'm really intrigued by. I think he's a very solid character in a bad movie. I'm gonna rank him at a very, very admirable B. He's a nice one, Cenobite or not. And that, unfortunately, is where the films end, at least for now. But that doesn't have to be where the franchise takes off, because we actually have a wide variety of Cenobite designs from a variety of Hellraiser comic books that were released throughout the years. Some of these are actually really good. Some of them have some fascinating little vignettes about life as a Cenobite, life talking to the Cenobites, how to be courted by them, possible configurations that are not the puzzle box itself, but lament configurations in the form of a guitar, or a children's book, or the architecture of a house. It's some really fascinating ideas, and I think these comics sort of capitalize on the ability of a medium such as this to really go wild and not be constrained by an effects budget. We also have some bad ones. We got some shitty comics. We got some offensive or not thought out or just bad writing comic issues. So it's really something of a mixed pot. But we will begin with what I think is a moderately successful run with the Epic Comics. These were sort of an earlier thing. They've got kind of crude art styles in some parts due to the scattershot approach, where it's sort of an anthology series of multiple artists, multiple writers, all just doing little vignettes in the Hellraiser universe, which sometimes is very good and sometimes is very bad. Interestingly, we do actually have some classic authors in here. Neil Gaiman, wrote the very excellent Wordsworth, which is a single one-off about one man's conversion to the ranks of the damned through a crossword puzzle. It's a very fascinating one. We've also got a run of 4 or 5 comics by Lana Wachowski, which are well written. They deal with subject matter that I don't think she is equipped to deal with, but they are well written. This is sort of the era of comics where they decided that it would be fun to have the Cenobites do things like uphold apartheid and try to cure AIDS, and it's a really remarkable writing choice that I think is a fucking decision. These particular comics have a hell of a lot of new characters, while still featuring the old classics. So I think it's a little bit presumptuous to think that I could go through all of them, but I will highlight some of the classics. Particularly the Devil's Brigade. This set of 5 Cenobites was tasked with fulfilling Leviathan's orders on Earth to instill order over chaos into the world. One of them, of course, was Pinhead himself, but the other 4 were all original characters, which I think are very fascinating. First, we have Face, the actor of the Cenobites. He wears the flayed skin of his victims. It's a very interesting take. He is also implied to be fucking Lon Chaney, the Man of 1,000 Faces. That's a hot take. Not like an impersonator, but like the real one who turned into a Cenobite and became an actor. Face is awesome. He's a drama queen, and he's super weird. But the design itself isn't as amazing as I think it could be. He's basically skinless with a face stapled onto his own. It's good, but it doesn't transcend. I'm gonna give him a solid B. He's a cool little theater kid, and I love him. Next, we have Atkins, also known as Hell's Armorer, a soldier in Vietnam who was converted due to his love of fighting and desire to beat the shit out of the Cenobites. I think it's a great idea for a character, but I think his actual conversion is kind of shitty. He's got some facial scars, and he's got some bandoliers running through his flesh, which is admittedly kind of cool, but other than that, he's just like a muscular, tough guy. He's basically an 80s movies hero. He also participates in a very brutal campaign of gang warfare that essentially only targets minority groups. It's a really fucked up storyline, and he just loves shooting them in these really disturbing displays of like what almost amounts to police violence. I think it's not a good look. This storyline was, I believe, an attempt to touch on, racial animosity and police violence, but it did it in such a clumsy, like, basically bigoted way that I really can't empathize with any of the character's actions. I know he's the bad guy, but there's a difference, again, between demon shit and participating in real racialized violence in an inner city situation. I think that's a little bit much for a fun fantasy series. Atkins is going to rank in at about a D. Now, further down that fucking rabbit hole, we have Abigor. Abigor is... I think she's one of the worst Cenobites we see. For a variety of reasons. This was the Wachowski run that I think attempted to say some very compelling things about why apartheid is bad. It was written during a time when this was a very active, prescient issue. I think her opinion that apartheid sucks is awesome, but I think the decision to have a Cenobite who is in charge of pushing the leaders of a country that is not South Africa but is South Africa to creating death camps as part of Leviathan's orders is a really fucked up storyline that we should not have been subjected to. I think it's pretty tone deaf and weird. I also think Abigor's actual character design is really uninteresting. The fucking whip mistress thing does not do it for me when we're talking about Cenobites. That's like a BDSM amateur night shit. And this is spiked chains and hooks and needles, and horrible tortures that humans don't want to be subjected to. A whip mistress aesthetic is not what we're looking for. This is an E. Next, we have Hell's librarian, Balberith. This character is fucking hilarious to me. I think she's amazing. I think having a weird, kindly old woman cenobite who quotes from obscure literature all the time is a fucking fantastic choice. I think her actual design is a little uninspired. She's just kind of a weird old woman cenobite. She's not particularly interesting. Well, her character certainly is, so that's going to be a C for me. Apart from that, we have a couple characters from the Epic Comics that do stand out. Orno is particularly interesting in how much he sucks. Orno looks stupid. He is portrayed doing some very weird facial poses. I think, in general, he's not a very interesting character to receive a high ranking. I'm going to put him in at a solid E. But then, we have a light in the darkness. We have one of my absolute favorite characters in all the Hellraiser franchise, including the movies, including the comics, including everything. His name is Whirljack, and he is my favorite fucking boy ever. He's amazing. Whirljack is a greaser punk with a leather jacket. He's got fingers growing out of his forehead. He's got slicked back hair and a cool sort of put upon personality that is absolutely fascinating to me. Because Whirljack, unlike almost every character we've ever seen among the Cenobites, is a regular fucking dude. He's a normal person. He's exasperated. He's socially awkward. He's got this weird college kid talking about his philosophy to you vibe. And most importantly, he spares a woman from hell because he fucking wants to, and she doesn't want to go there, and he kind of has a little bit of a crush on her. He's a regular greaser punk who I would be very happy to top, and more importantly, he brings a very interesting sort of feeling to the entire Hellraiser franchise. In the film adaptation of the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical Cats, there is a particular scene that has been remarked upon by many people before me in which Idris Elba's McCavity removed his coat. All of the cats and cats are naked, but we don't acknowledge it. Idris Elba has a coat on, and short fur, and a cat hair color that is probably poorly chosen, pretty similar to his human skin tone. And that act of removing his coat means that suddenly McCavity is naked. And because McCavity is naked, suddenly all the cats wearing just as much clothing as him, they're naked too. They're all naked. This is not exactly a Catherine original, but I think it implies some very interesting things about the Hellraiser universe, because Whirljack here is my McCavity. He is a regular dude. He talks normal, he's not an asshole, and he respects people's consent, something that none of the other Cenobites do. Suddenly, they're all naked. They don't have to act like this if they don't want to. This is not some trick of the brain. This is not Leviathan's influence. They are assholes because they are shitty people, and Whirljack, unique among them, is just a nice guy who is handsome and cute and kind and very well designed. He's gonna come in at an S ranking for me. He is my favorite and I love him. That marks the end of the Epic Comics run, but more recently we have had a very interesting Hellraiser run from Boom Studios. Now these comics are a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more specific in that they intend to be less of a amuse-bouche sort of narrative and more of a linear story that is told in several sections. We follow Elliot Spencer's Pinhead as he leaves the ranks of hell, as he tries to find himself as a human again, as he encounters old friends and enemies from his past. And we are met with a multitude of beautiful new Cenobite designs. The first that must be remarked upon is, of course, the amazing decision to have the new Hell Priest, Pinhead's replacement, be none other than Kirsty Cotton, the protagonist of the first Hellraiser film, as well as Hellbound, and my personal favorite final girl in horror movie history. Kirsty is amazing, and her run as Pinhead is fucking incredible. She is sort of a fuck up. Her plans to defeat Hell's schemes and manipulations ultimately fall through. She bursts into situations without knowing what's going on and ends up making an ass of herself. But it's such a relatable, understandable character. We've all experienced imposter syndrome. We've all known the sting of getting into a new job that you're not qualified for, but just trying to make a difference in an industry that doesn't understand you. And I think that is what Kirsty Cotton's role as Pinhead brings to this series. Unfortunately, the design itself doesn't measure up to all of that. Kirsty looks like Pinhead as a woman. She has a robe that is very different. She's got white and red rather than the black and silver, but other than that, she's lacking in body modifications in a very lackluster way. Pinhead had the no nipples. He had hooks inserted into his flesh, in addition to the pins. But Kirsty just has the scalp scarification and the pins inserted into it, which I think is maybe a push to make our, best girl here a little more palatable to look at. But I think it was a mistake, and I think she could be far more interesting if the series had any gumption. She's gonna rank in at a B. This series, though, however, does bring us a very wonderful design in that of Cordell Wolf. Cordell, from the series The Hellraiser, The Road Below, is a teen girl who signs up with Kirsty Cotton's Pinhead in order to acquire the demonic powers she needs to kill a group of nightmare creatures targeting her family. It's a really interesting story. It's an interesting example of Kirsty fucking things up. But at the end of the day, it does give us a masterful character design that we have not seen anywhere in these films. Cordell is brilliantly designed. The flayed skin around her hands that forms whip-like tendrils she uses to attack her foes is such an excellent choice that I don't believe any of the early movies would have ever had the effects budget for, but just sings in a comic like this. It's absolutely brilliant. She's going to rank in at a solid A. She is one of my favorite designs. The Boom comics also bring us an iteration of Tiffany, who you may recall from Hellbound. She's the little girl who is so good at solving puzzles, and who I thought for a very long time was meant to be some sort of autistic coding in a character, but it doesn't seem like that was actually the intention. I know it's very disappointing, but she's still a very cool character. She's, at this point, something of a surrogate daughter to Kirsty, who ends up signing up among Hell's ranks to fight in a war against demons from another Hell. It's a very interesting storyline that sort of goes off the rails and is a little ridiculous in points, but her hospital-themed aesthetic that harkens back to the medical abuse she suffered is a little fucked up, but I think it certainly speaks to the way that a lot of the cenobites reflect their own personal trauma in their transformations. I think the pulled back skin around the skull exposing her brain is very brilliant, but I think the weird metal shit she has in front of her face doesn't really make sense. I'm not really sure what that's supposed to be or represent. So I think the design has positives and negatives. The all white is cool, the knives are cool, but some elements sort of land flat. That's going to be a B for me on this one for Tiffany. But there is one more character that I think needs to be remarked upon from the Boom Studios comics. I think one that really stands out. See, Kirsty fucks up as Pinhead. She's not good at her job, and eventually Leviathan decides to move on with the position and take on a new hire. And that new hire is none other than Harry D'Amour, a cult detective. Fulfilling the role of the Hell Priest, Harry is brilliant. He's got everything that made the original Pinhead memorable. The pins, the dress, he's got a weird skirt, but he's also got new alterations that make him stand out as an original character. His flesh around his shoulder and chest is exposed, revealing his heart to everyone around him, and his eye has been implanted with this magnifying glass, showing his sort of detective personality shining through even in this position. He is given so much thought and care into all the little elements of his character design that makes it very fantastic to me and makes him stand out as a completely different character. But that's not enough. Like Whirljack, Harry D'Amour's Pinhead is absolutely brilliant because he acts like a regular person. I'm going to show you a panel from these comics. It is the funniest thing I've ever seen. It is absolutely brilliant writing, and it was an amazing design choice. Ready? There you go. If that doesn't indicate how fucking amazing this character is, I don't know what will. He has a goddamn handgun. It's the best choice I've seen in this franchise for years. I think it's absolutely brilliant. I think it makes him stand out as an individual human thrust into a position he is not prepared for. And I think it compounds with his ongoing characterization as this sort of beleaguered, put-upon, awkward dude who doesn't know what the fuck he's doing in a very endearing way. It all combines into this very brilliant design for a very fascinating character. Harry D'Amour's Hell Priest is going to rank in at an S tier. And that's all the movies, and that's all the comics. It's really everything we have. That's the end of the video. Except, there is one other thing. There is one other movie we could talk about. Listen, I know how we feel about pre-ordering games. I know it ruins the industry. I know how we feel about reviewing things before they've come out. But it was recently announced who would be portraying Pinhead in the 2022 Hellraiser remake, specifically the remake that aims to take on the story of the Hellbound Heart rather than Hellraiser 1 itself. And I have some thoughts. I know it's too early. I know we've been burned before, but Kierkegaard had this idea of a leap of faith. You acknowledge the truth of the matter. You acknowledge the facts. But you have a belief in your heart. And you hold on to that belief and you look at the facts and you put them to the side for a second. And you hold the belief and you jump. You go forward. You make a decision. You act on it without caring about the facts, without caring about the logical understanding, without caring about what's happened in the past. You believe in something. And that's why I will be giving Jamie Clayton's Pinhead an S ranking. I believe this is a wonderful choice for the future of the franchise. I think a trans Pinhead is an amazing design. I think a female Pinhead is an amazing design. I think both will speak to the original intention of the book. Clive Barker is, after all, a gay man writing about, as I said before, a societally forbidden attraction. I think having a trans character, or at the very least, a trans actor portraying a character, brings that hint of queerness back to the franchise that has been lacking for a very long time. Also, she was fucking brilliant in Sense8, and I just want to see more of her in things. I just hope this, gives her career even more of a start. She's really an amazing actress, and I'm just so excited to see more of her. Well, that about does it. Once again, I hope I was a hideous delight to gaze upon. I hope the pain I experienced gave you some sort of demented pleasure as you watched me writhe here for your entertainment. I don't know. I mean, my opinions are just that. They're opinions. I'm not a scholar on the works of Clive Barker, although, given the nature of my videos, maybe in a couple years I will be, and maybe then I can whip out my diploma and actually school you motherfuckers on this topic, but as of now, these are only my humble opinions. I'm very excited for the new movie. I think it's going to be amazing. I know that's not really founded on anything, but it being based on the true source material, it being produced, if not written or directed, but at the very least produced by Clive Barker himself, and most importantly, the queer element, I think will make it a very, very interesting work. But, you know, who's to say? I'm excited, and I'm not going to let anything dampen my mood on that. This sucked. I mean, it was awesome, but listen, the pain and pleasure stuff is hot, but like realistic, like real life, I don't know. I'm always like, oh, Katie's a sub, but like then I do shit like this, and like, you know what? Pain is bad and not pleasant, and I don't love it. So that's my hot take. Like and subscribe, please. I know it's shitty to say that, right? But like, everybody's gotta. The bell is something. I don't know what the bell means or signifies, but everyone says to ring the bell. So that's something you should please do. I think it would be appropriate to sign off with. I mean, we gotta see the lovely artwork, don't we? We gotta end on a shot of, my friend's beautiful design. That's right. I actually fucking did it. And that's it, you beautiful freaks. I'll see you the next time I decide to subject myself to horrible torments for your entertainment.